Ow! Greetings, YouTube. This is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and welcome to another Defiance review. And so, we are now up to episode 7, I believe, When Twilight Dims the Sky Above. And as promised, I'm keeping up with this stuff quite a bit more studiously. So, this episode really just... I guess it's like, okay, the previous episode was one that kind of gave a tiny bit of respite and did some character building, of course, in the aftermath of the whole issue with Ramtak and the Votanus Collective Army and whatnot. So it gave us a chance to kind of breathe for a moment. But this episode, oh man, things just go from bad to worse. It's like, you thought this whole issue with the Votanus Collective was done, didn't you? Before I go any further, of course, everyone, as you know, I spoil the living daylights out of this show. So if you don't want spoilers, don't listen any further. Alright. We good? We good. So anyway, first of all, you still have Stama as a grieving widow, or at least she believes that she's a widow, having believed that that her husband Daytak, of course, went nobly to his death and destroyed the that VC army that was standing outside the gates. And at this point, Tevgen, the Omek stranger among the rest of the Votans, is basically trying to convince her to go with him to Australia because he wants peace for his people, and is saying, I want us to just, there's a continent called Australia. It's not inhabited, which kind of makes me wonder, man, the Arcfall must have really tore Australia a new one. But anyway, he said, there's a continent called Australia. We're going to go there. It's uninhabited. You could come with me and even bring your son. And I'm thinking, wow, Alak doesn't exactly like her right now. So that's going to be kind of a difficult proposition at best. And, well, naturally, Stama doesn't want to be uprooted from Defiance, which is the only real home she's ever known, it seems. And, it needs to go, somewhere really, really far away. But right as this happens, Amanda goes into the lawkeeper's office, and of course, Nolan is nowhere to be found. He's at the Needwant getting drunk and still listening to these weird hallucinations he started having, which were hinted at the end of the previous episode. It was with some person in military attire constantly whispering stuff in his ear. So it left us wondering what was going to happen. Well, of course, this episode doesn't fail to disappoint on that. And the whole time, Nolan is sitting there drinking with this military guy, never sure what he is, who he is, whispering in his ear. And Amanda and Irissa track Nolan down to the Needwant and say, come on, this is really big. And he's like, what's going on? And as he's following out of the building, you find out that the VC have arrived in Defiance. However, this is the legitimate VC, led by Vice Chancellor Vosk, coming straight out of South America, so that, and they're trying to broker peace. The Vice Chancellor finally manages to explain the whole deal that, of course, what Defiance didn't know to Amanda, and that was that Ramtak was rogue. He was actually sent in. Him and his detachment were actually sent up to North America to provide relief. But Ramtak used that opportunity to just start opening up a wholesale slaughter of humans. And, of course, and so, of course, they realized that, this was a big problem with their own design. And they said, we were actually on our way to provide assistance for Defiance, but is someone, I guess it seems that y'all, managed to take out our big shame, and beat us to the punch. So they wanted to open up formal diplomatic negotiations and a formal apology to Defiance. Well, of course, because Amanda is no stranger to people coming to her, offering her all these nice gifts from more powerful people, Amanda is naturally suspicious about this, since the E-Rep I finally got it this time, guys. I kept on wanting to say Earth Alliance, but it's EREP, sorry. But the EREP, of course, if you remember the first season, was constantly, trying to woo the mayor to make a formal alliance with them, and then, of course, at the end of the first season, they were kind of forced into it after Defiance was left defenseless. They just rolled in. But now, of course, Amanda is naturally more suspicious and more wary. At first, I'd forgotten about that, to be completely honest, and I'd gone back and read a review on Denim Geek about this, and it had kind of jogged my memory about the whole deal, why Amanda was so suspicious. And Nolan, standing by there, is becoming increasingly paranoid and erratic. I still listen to this weird military guy speaking in his ear. And, well, when the Votanus Collective arrive, who else but Daytak Tar comes out of one of the military vans with a new arm. It looks like it's cybernetically reinforced. They show a scene after he and Stama have done Stuppen, and I just like saying that. Sorry, but anyway, she takes the sheath off of his arms, some blue glove, and you see what looks like his arm, but covered in strange wires and different and various types of cybernetic enhancements. As a matter of fact, there's a scene in the show where Nolan's bracing up to Daytak, and Daytak just grabs his arm and just does the most one-sided arm wrestling you have ever seen. And Nolan kind of steps away, leaving Daytak to go back home, because he's like, I'm going to go back home and make love with my beautiful wife. And, of course, those are one of the times where Daytak can sometimes be awesome, as despicable as he can be sometimes. Anyway, I'm going off track. So, you see Nolan having these weird fits of irrationality and paranoia, and of course Amanda dismisses him, especially after he gets into a Mexican standoff with Daytak, and Irissa standing by there, her guns drawn, wondering what the blankety-blank is going on. So finally, Vice Chancellor Vosk also dismisses Daytak, because they found out that Daytak originally, he never told them that he was supposed to have died, and so he had gone along with them and gotten that arm under false pretenses, and she's none too happy with him. So after Daytak spends a little time with his wife, Amanda arrives at his home with Vice Chancellor Vosk and some of the EREP soldiers, and basically tells Stama that what the Votanus Collective wants, because Amanda is basically hearing all this good stuff coming from the Vice Chancellor, and she finally just lays on him, okay, nothing good is ever free, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. What do you want? What they want is to come and have Tevkin, their Olmec guest, come sit at the table. Tevkin, thus far, has been very hands-off, and he particularly hates the Votanus Collective. Can't blame him, because the Votanus Collective was sort of the government of the Votans even before they left the Votanus system, and they were the ones who made the plans to sabotage the technology of the Olmecs to prevent the Olmec from leaving their system. So when they got to Earth, they thought all the Olmec were dead. Well, there was only one ship, of course, that had survived. All that, of course, is explained earlier on in the series. Tevkin, like I said, because of this, has a reason to hate the Votanus Collective. But they send Stama, Amanda sends Stama to go and talk some sense into Tevkin. Because, if you value your husband's life, you will, because the Vice Chancellor is none too pleased about the way that he got, what he told them, and he kind of lied to them, and she was going to blow his head off. So, and because Stama was constantly protesting, saying, Tevkin's not going to do it, he's not going to do it. Finally, he's forced to go to Tevkin, and she is worried because she tells Daytak, I'm not, I can't say no to him. You know what their nature is like. But she has to, of course, decline his offer. And This results in one of the more frightening scenes involving the Olmec, because Tevkin is pissed, and he and poor Stama is like a little girl just kind of standing there, and this is like the most afraid you have ever seen Stama. You know, if you watch this show, just how Stama can easily play it cool and calm and demure and everything. No, no, no. She was scared. I'm surprised she didn't pee herself. And the interesting thing about the Olmec is when they're particularly being vicious, they unhinge their jaw and you see the two huge canines pop up. That's monstrous. Think about that being the last thing you see. So yeah, the Olmec are truly interesting and yet downright frightening race when you think about it and what they are and what they've done. But Stama, because Tevkin, is in love with her, manages to talk some sense into him, because she says, you're wise, one of the wisest of the Olmec. You know that if you're going to want to live in peace, you have to lay down the sword. Even sit at the table, even with people you hate. And pretty much Tevkin sees the wisdom of her words and backs down and agrees to go to this meeting that Amanda and the Botanist Collective have arranged so they can sit down and talk about things. All the while, Nolan is just being talked to by that weird voice in his head, telling him, the VC aren't here just to talk. They got something planned. And all the while, he's sitting there putting together and cleaning out all his weapons, and he's completely distant from Orissa. So Orissa's really worried about what's going on in Nolan's head, and of course, you remember one of the previous episodes, they had that bit of arc tech that was in their heads that Doc Yule had to tweak. Even though it's left her and Nolan, kind of joined at the hip, more or less. They can't get too far from each other, maybe about a mile before the same thing happened in that episode that happens now. So she goes to Doc Yule, of course, afraid of what's going on, and Doc Yule seems horribly distracted. She seems to be putting together some weird device involving an old cell phone. And finally, Orissa manages to shake her out of that distraction just long enough to tell her what's going on with Nolan, and she basically says there might be a glitch in the arc tech, and so she gives her some weird hypodermic of some sort to tell him to hit him with that, and so and it'll calm him down. So she agrees to go do that when she goes back and sees Nolan cleaning out his guns and talking to himself, and she tries to use the hypodermic on him, but he swats it out of her hand, and he's like, no, I can't just sit here, I gotta go, I know something's going wrong, I gotta go to that meeting. And he goes storming off into town, and then of course we cut to the little soiree with Defiance and representatives of Defiance and of course the VC. And fortunately, Stama ends up arriving with Tevkin in tow and gives Chancellor Vosk a chance to sit down at the table. See, the whole deal is, as Vosk explains these things, is that, of course, the Votans are terrified about the Olmec after they learned, I guess through transmissions from the rogue unit of the VC, that the Olmec were here, and they had, I forget what the type of ship they called it, but it's a harvester, that's what they call it, which is basically the thing that stored all those thousands upon thousands or millions of Olmecs in those sleeping pods. And they're worried that the Olmec are going to come and have another dread harvest. And now all this time, Doc Yule is creating some sort of device as she goes outside, points into the sky, and starts typing stuff into. On board the Olmec ship, it awakens Kinsey. Oy vey. So things, of course, getting much more complicated. And of course, if they couldn't get any more complicated, Kinsey arrives at the little party. Not only that, of course, she's prepared to just tear into everybody like they're a pork chop, and just ruin everything that the humans and the Votans and even Tevkin are trying to work for. And then lo and behold, Nolan pops in. He sneaks around the mansion, finds the Chancellor's room, knocks the guards out, nearly kills one of them. Though the voices tell him kill him, he's like, no, it's going to make too much noise. And he starts searching around the room, and he finds a bag under the bed. He sees like all these components for a bomb, so he runs to where the party is being held and tells tells Amanda they were planning to blow up the place. Gives her the bag. And he's pointing guns at everybody, and she opens up the bag, and there's nothing but like jewelry and a few personal effects of the vice chancellor. And now you know that not only has he been paranoid and sketchy and hallucinating, hearing voices, he's also seeing things. So, he's really in a bad way. Unfortunately, it gets a lot worse because he ends up shooting the Vice Chancellor and then hauling off. Having the VC troops chase him down. Well, of course, this has put Defiance in a really, 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 really bad position. Because as the story's progressing, there are parts where the Vice Chancellor and Amanda are talking. And the Vice Chancellor is actually the daughter of the previous Vice Chancellor who was assassinated, and that was the assassination that set off the Pale Wars. Now, no one knows who assassinated the Vice Chancellor, the original Vice Chancellor, or Chancellor, I believe. They don't know if it was humans or Votans. Both sides had reason during the time when it happened. There was a lot of the tensions were extremely high between the humans and the Votans. The humans were always just so reticent to give Votans any land. They were giving them land in South America, but there was still a whole bunch more sleeping aboard the Ark ships. And humans, of course, paranoid and xenophobic as we are, would have had reason to try to of course, assassinate the Votans to try to set off a war just to, get rid of the Votans and reclaim Earth for humans. And Votans would have had a reason to assassinate the Chancellor because they might have wanted to set off war with the humans to, of course, take Earth for the Votans. They had the leg up on technology, even though, as you see in the show, a lot of technology had before this point more than likely had been shared from the Votans to the humans and back and vice versa. But all that aside, this particular issue, because of the political situation in South America, made things really, really, really bad. And so, of course, the VC troops track down Nolan and nearly kill him right before Orissa sticks him with that hypodermic and knocks him out. He comes to his senses, and Amanda basically realizes something. She has to turn Nolan over to the VC, or else the VC would have come and just run roughshod over North America. They would have wanted his blood, seeing how the Chancellor was a centrist and very much kind of was holding the whole issue in balance here when it came to peace with the humans. She and a lot of Votans didn't want the same thing to happen with the Pale Wars. That was, of course, something that neither side needed. The Earth still needed a chance to heal. And, of course, the humans needed a chance to heal as well as Votans. So, what Nolan did messed things up horrendously. And so the episode ends with Nolan and Orissa, because she can't be too far away from him, being taken away to Brasilia, which is the capital, I guess, of the Votanus Collective. And what did I want to say? Oh, yeah. And Tevkin, confronting Kinsey in their little hideout near the mines, and Kinsey this time has reprogrammed these orbs to affect Tevkin. She basically is going to try to put things under her control. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is the reason why the way she was able to do it, of course, with Doc Yule, was because in the previous episode with that weird device that she injected into her. And of course, I guess Tevkin didn't know about it, and Doc Yule had been trying to remove it, but there was a scene where she was trying to, something like preventing her from it. So now the plot thickens involving the Olmec, and things have just gotten worse with the VC. So this was an episode where, I guess you could call it as if you thought things couldn't get any worse. So we've got 3 more episodes. It's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens here. But like the folks at Den of Geek, I'm also very curious myself to see if Defiance is going to show areas other than just Defiance. That's one issue I've had thus far with the series. They show very little outside of Defiance, except for just wilderness, and they've had a few episodes where they had glimpses of other cities and towns, but very little. People living out in the middle of nowhere in RVs and trailer homes. But that's about it. They really have, and of course that glimpse of New York right before it got terraformed out into oblivion. So they really haven't shown much else. Anything else has happened to the rest of the world. Not the way the video game is kind of showing what was left of the coastline of California, especially San Francisco. So I'm hoping that with the next few episodes, we'll get a chance to view the rest of the world outside of Defiance. And I know that the only reason why they've been doing this is because, yeah, the show is centered on Defiance. It's bringing everything else in. But when you're dealing with a world that's supposed to be changed, an Earth that's supposed to be rendered into something that is so unlike Earth that we know, it's hard to do that when you're centering your show on one little town built on top of what used to be St. Louis. I think there's so much more to say about the world at large. And I think both the video games and the TV show are kind of limiting that. I'm hoping that, I know it probably isn't going to be doing much more at the end of this season. During this season. But I'm hoping, if we get a 4th season, that they're going to expand things and not be afraid to show different parts of the world. Because we want to see this big world that has been hinted at. Defiance it seems to be a big feat of world building. And especially in regards, of course, there not just being one alien race the human race is dealing with, but 7. This is like Alienation. Has some, of course, what's the word I'm looking for? Some similarities to Alienation, especially in themes of tolerance and racism and all that kind of stuff. Which, oh, by the way, reminds me of another little anecdote from this series. Of course, Nolan calling the VC members haints, which is a really highly charged derogatory term for Votans, and then the vice chancellor talking about Daytak calling him a haint, and then Amanda looking at her funny, and she just kind of smiles and says, "It's okay if we say it." I'm like, yeah, there's another word I can think of that I wish I didn't have that double standard. But all things considered, despite my issues with things not going too much beyond Defiance, it's doing a great job because it's centering its show on character. And this episode is just amazing. I'm so impressed with all the episodes thus far. It's hard to give them a rating. I can't think of any ratings. This one was a definite solid 10. I can't really think of anything wrong with this one. Some people I saw complained about Nolan's, driving into insanity, and were saying that, well, I wouldn't have believed it until Doc Yule had explained the whole bit of Arctech, and I guess that does make it more believable, because Nolan seemed to have been dealing with some issues of depression and everything like that because of him, because those folks who had died under his command. But yeah, him going this far, that's just so unlike him. He's usually pretty calm and collected. I was like, something ain't right. Of course, according to Doc Yule, something wasn't right. But anyway, this is a build-up to something really major, and you're seeing some really big problems on two fronts. VC back again being a problem, and now the OMEC, and of course Kinsey wanting to be true to her people and going on a blood-soaked tear. And now without Nolan around, I shudder to think of what's going to happen. And of course she's got her sights set on Stama, because how did she put it? She looked at Stama, was saying I have a big appetite or something like that. So yeah, I mean, Kinsey is an idiot. She's gonna get herself killed, and because she's nowhere near as old as Tevkin, and Omek live for, it seems to be, thousands of years. So, and the older they get, the stronger they become. Kinsey is still very, very young as Omek goes, so, just take a bullet to the head to take her down. But Defiance is kind of short on people who are really good with a gun right now that Nolan and Rissa are nowhere around. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next episode. Very interesting indeed. Well, I think I've yammered on for long enough. So thank you everyone for listening once again, and I will be back next week for more Defiance. Comment, rate, subscribe if you feel so inclined. And so once again, this is DecKrash, better known as Brandon, and as always, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.